Are we live or are we not? Let's see. We should be. Oh, there we go. Yo! Sup, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to each and every one of you to another live stream. Gordon, how you doing, sir? ANC can pull the wool over all their pick and shovel specialist eyes. Not intelligent people. True. Alan Davies, how you doing, sir? Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so very happy to join you once again on this beautiful, beautiful Friday. You will notice, just by the way, that I don't stream every single day of the week, and there is an actual reason for it. I don't want to overdo the streams. You know, I know there's a lot of people that stream every single day. I feel like I want to be able to prepare a proper conversation and prepare something that will actually, be informative. And if I do that every single day, it's literally just going to become me sort of rambling about what I deem to be largely unimportant stuff. So I know a live stream is a huge commitment for a lot of people. And I realize that there's been so many people that's asked, look, if you're doing these conversations, would you please just cut out the important stories and put that into video form? And I will try when there's a story that I think is sort of really cool and I want most people to see it. I'll cut that out for you and I'll make that a separate video. But I don't want to turn this channel also just into a live stream highlight channel. That was never the point or the opinion or the idea. And so it will only ever be if there's like a story that I think is super important. But otherwise, these live streams genuinely is an opportunity for me to tackle topics that doesn't easily turn into videos. So I could make a video about it, but it's going to be a very long video. And when I'm doing a very long video, so if I sit down and I'm going to be recording a video for 30 minutes, I find myself getting bored with just doing the video. And so it sort of becomes a mess. Whereas when I'm live, I can see you guys commenting, I can see you guys chatting. Oftentimes I see a comment that I go, oh, that's important. That reminds me of something else that I wanted to say. So it keeps it a little bit more interesting, which is why I try and leave these for like big topics and also topics that I know a lot of you might have opinions about so that I can get those opinions in real time rather than having to, read the comments. And while I try to read every single comment that you guys leave on the videos, I can't always respond to every single one of those comments because there's a lot of comments and oftentimes the response would be 10, 20 minutes just to actually reply to the full comment. So yeah, I really appreciate all of the comments, but just know that if I'm just responding with, oh, thank you so much, I really appreciate that, I did read your comment, and your comment is going to have an effect on maybe a future video or maybe just the way I'm thinking. So I truly appreciate that. Rex, how you doing? DNX, how you doing? Adam, how you doing? Riviol, how you doing? Or Riviol? Don't know how to pronounce your name, but how you doing, Rivi? Leon, how you doing, sir? Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. I am so happy to have all of you here. Before we get going, I want to give a massive, massive shout out to Blank. You asked to keep your name anonymous. Actually, you asked in your reply on your donation that I should keep your donation private. But you did ask me a couple of questions and you wanted to reach out to me and you wanted to have a sit down and just have a discussion. I'm more than open to it, by the way. You can contact me on Discord. The link should be in the description down below, or on X in DMs, and we can set up a conversation if you want to have that. But I want to thank you for the donation. It truly means the world to me. And yeah, I'm always open to having sit downs. I don't always have the time to do it immediately, but when I have time, I'm happy to have a conversation and just sort of hash it out. Especially this is about religion. And yeah, it's about homosexuality and Christianity. So if you're the one that made that donation, please reach out to me. You're more than happy to do it. I will just quickly give an answer here because it alludes to an idea, and there's a couple of comments from yesterday's or the day before yesterday's live stream as well. A lot of people have a very big problem with the idea that homosexuality is a sin, that the church does not recognize homosexuality as a valid way of life. And I understand where those problems come from. You see, homosexuality is an interesting sin, very interesting sin. And in many ways, the church is as much to blame for the specialization or the special position that this sin has in the world as the world has. But in order to explain this, would all of you agree that, for example, a pastor cannot have an extramarital affair with one of the women in his church while he is married? Would you agree with that? If a pastor was caught sleeping with another woman whilst he was married, that pastor would no longer be allowed to be a pastor. I think most Christians would absolutely agree. Yeah, that's absolutely wrong. It's adultery. It's actively engaging in sin. That is not allowed. Would all of you agree that a pastor that might have a, proclivity for stealing stuff will not be allowed to be a pastor? So if you have a pastor that is a kleptomaniac and he's just stealing stuff at random, constantly getting caught by the police for, shoplifting, that person would not be allowed to remain a pastor. You would all agree that if a pastor is unmarried and yet living in sin, in other words, living with a woman, having active sexual relations with that woman, that pastor would not be allowed to be a pastor, at least in any serious biblical church. That would not be allowed. For example, in my church, if in my church, I'm currently undergoing membership classes in my church. As soon as the membership classes are over, I will start with baptism classes, because while I was baptized as a baby, I am a Baptist. I'm in the Baptist church, and we believe in the believer's baptism. So you must be able to profess your faith if you're going to be baptized and for your baptism to mean anything. So I have to go through baptism classes. Once I've been baptized, and this will only happen after the classes and after an interview with the pastor as well as with the elders, a discussion about whether or not I actually understand what baptism is all about. Do I understand what I am professing when I get baptized? And of course, I've been in this church for about 2 years, so I know the pastor personally very, very well. I'm literally going to his house this afternoon. I'm hanging out at his house tomorrow as well. We play board games together. We're good friends. But all of this means that they've been able to govern for the last 2 years. What kind of man am I? Am I truly a professing Christian, or am I just someone that, sort of says I'm a Christian, but I don't actually live it? This is super important to my church. And once you join my church, you're going to be involved in the body. People are going to invite you out, because everyone is both inviting you into the family, but also making sure that they're not inviting, just anyone into the family. So there is that part of it. But if I wanted to become a member in my church, but I, for example, have a girlfriend, and me and my girlfriend are actively engaged in sexual activity, I would not be allowed to become a member. My church would absolutely just tell me straight up, we will not baptize you, and you will not become a member, because you are actively living in sin, right? And as a result of actively living in sin, you cannot be a member in the church in good standing. If I was already a member and then suddenly I started sleeping with a woman and maybe started living with a woman, I would go under what is called church discipline, where the church would now say, okay, you are under discipline. This is announced in front of the entire membership. So they call a membership meeting, and and usually it first happens like this. The pastor will come to me, and the pastor will tell me, look, we know that you have been sleeping with your girlfriend and you have been living in sin. You are under church discipline. Please repent. So in other words, stop what you're doing and return to normalcy, to where you're supposed to be. If I refuse, the pastor will bring an elder, and the pastor and the elder will come and visit me, and they will again ask me to repent. If I still refuse, I then go under what is called official church discipline. This means that I am not allowed to partake in communion. So I'm not allowed to drink the wine or eat the bread. I'm not allowed to vote at church meetings. I'm not allowed to, I'm under church discipline. So the church prays for me. The church immediately ascribes to me an elder that will come to me on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis to meet with me, to discuss, to try and get me to repent of this sin. If I continue in my sin and I just refuse to listen, I will eventually lose membership within the church. I will be excommunicated from the church. That's just how it works. That's how we all do it. Now, this is where homosexuality gets its special tag. You see, as people, as humans, we love to focus on other people's sins when it is not sins that we struggle with. So, for example, just to give you a good example here, I can look at a man like Jeffrey Epstein and I can say, what an evil, evil, evil man. Why? Because I do not struggle with the sins that Jeffrey Epstein struggled with. I have no proclivity towards children. Children to me are just kids, right? They're funny to look at. They sort of do funny stuff. There's a kid in our church. She's about, I think, 3 or 4. It's like a tiny little adult. I don't know why, but I love the way they do things, like walking through, opening doors and stuff, just watching this tiny little adult try to make their way in the world. So I have no proclivity towards children, which means, right, that's not a sin that I struggle with. So I can happily judge that sin. It's what Jesus talks about when he says, why do you judge the splinter in your brother's eye, but you don't see, right, the tree effectively in your own eye? Right? You don't see the plank in your own eye, but you want to judge the splinter. And then Jesus goes further with that, because a lot of people, especially wealthy people, go, do not judge, right? But that's not what Jesus says. Jesus says, first remove the splinter from your own eye so that you can better see how to remove first remove the plank from your own eye so you can better see how to remove the splinter from your brother's eye. What Jesus is warning about is self-righteous judgment. So I will happily sit here and self-righteously judge Jeffrey Epstein because he's struggling with sins that I do not have. And this is very similar to homosexuality. The church for a long time gave homosexuality this special sort of category of sin, where it is just the most evil and defiled sin you can imagine. But that's not really what the Bible tells us. Paul gives sexual immorality as well as unnatural sexual desires an equal place in terms of sins, right? And how bad those sins are. But not because God views those sins as somehow more evil than any of the others, but rather that those are the two sins that not only have an effect on the soul, but also have an effect on the body. So it's sort of like a double sin. It destroys not just the body, but also the soul. And so what they do to us is so much worse than, for example, telling a little white lie. You know, a white lie will, yes, it will sort of lead to a lot of bad results mentally and spiritually, but it won't have an effect on your physical well-being. Whereas sexual immorality and unnatural sexual desires, they will have an actual effect on your physical health, right? And on your physical standing. And so these two things combined make them incredibly wicked sins. And so what the world has done with what the church did, so the church made this sin a sort of special sin, the world came and very interestingly started to change it to love is love. Right, so this is just love. Without understanding why homosexuality is wrong. What is the reason? Now, I can't give you in absolute terms why homosexuality is wrong. In fact, I can't even tell you in absolute terms why God finds most sins or all sin so incredibly repugnant. Think about this. My brother and I were literally talking about it today. Christ tells us that if you so much as look at a woman in lust, so for example, if I'm at the beach and I just look at a girl passing by and I'm looking at her bum, right? And just for a moment, I think, oh, wow, what a bum. I have committed sin. And for God, that sin is repugnant. He hates that sin. And then you think to yourself, but why? I didn't act on this, right? I didn't do anything. I just looked. I don't know why. All I know is that God is so holy, so righteous, so perfect in his own being that even just that to him is disgusting. He does not want that anywhere near him. And I use the word disgusting because it's the best human word I have for it. I don't think God is physically sitting there disgusted with the whole experience. I don't think that's who God is. He's love. And so it's more of, it hurts him to know that I am doing these things, right? So I can't exactly tell, but I will say this. Think about why sex was created. What was the purpose of sex? The purpose of sex was to bring forth life. That's why God created it. Right? That's why God gave Adam Eve. It was so that they could bring about life. A man and a man cannot bring about life. A woman and a woman cannot bring about life. And so you have to ask yourself, what is the core problem with that relationship? And then you add to it, why does God not want men and women to engage in sexual relations without being married? Well, that's because when men and women engage in sexual relationships without being married, they are not engaging in sexual relationship with the primary function or even secondary function or even the acceptance that life might flow from this union. Right? Think about this. When you went out to the clubs or to the bar, I remember when I was at uni, I would oftentimes go home with girls after a night out. And having children was not only not the purpose of that engagement. In fact, if that woman were to come up to me and say, hey, I'm pregnant, I would view that as a massive failure of that evening. It would not be a great idea or a great time for me to hear that I have just knocked up some random girl that I took home after a night out. Right? And so what is the purpose of that engagement? Why am I with that woman, in bed? Lust. Purely to satisfy my carnal desire. Who is the father of lust? Satan. It is his domain. So whilst I'm there, I am sort of engaging and eating from his table. And his table is one that will consistently draw you back to it. And it is a never-ending spiral that you will just never get out of, ever, because he will not allow you to get free of it. And that's why, at least from my perspective, why homosexuality is viewed as a sin. Why it cannot lead to anything good, because two men were never meant to love one another. And we have the results of this. The data shows this. There are very few homosexual couples that are actually monogamous. Very few homosexual couples actually make it work. The divorce rate among homosexual men is astronomically high. The abuse rate among lesbian couples is insane. In fact, they have levels of abuse that is far worse than in heterosexual couples. So we were never made for each other. We don't actually fit together. And so what a man requires from a wife and what a wife requires from her husband, a husband and a husband can never supply to one another. We can never really fulfill one another because that's not what we were made for. And so if we engage in that, we are actively just engaging in the sin of carnal desire and nothing more. So you're still very welcome to reach out to me if you want to put your side across on this. But of course, we have at our own church, we have gay people there. We have people who are openly gay at our church. They do not engage in sexual activity because they understand that it is sin, but they do have it, right? They do struggle with that. That is their sin. It is their burden to bear. And to those who say, well, I was born this way, I will just argue, I was also born this way. I was born with lust. When I see a beautiful woman, I promise you my thoughts are not pure. I promise you my thoughts are not pure. I was born with this idea that I really want to have as much sex as humanly possible. I was born with this thing where I was addicted to pornography. Right? I was born that way. That's just who I am. And I if I don't stop myself, I will literally just keep going. But being born this way is not an excuse to continue doing it. That is just you needing now to pray and ask for deliverance from that. So yeah, by all means, reach out to me. Thank you so much for that donation. I truly appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. But yeah, sin is terrible. And, it's it's one of those things where I think a lot of the times we want God to fit into our worldview rather than we fitting into God's. And so, just keep that in mind. Dirt, how you doing, sir? Grofa, how you doing, sir? A special sin, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to the reprobate mind, to those things which are not convenient. Is this why the degeneration is gone now? Profile, yeah, there's a long story behind why I no longer do gaming content, but all of it has to do with coming to Christ and starting to ask serious questions about what exactly am I adding to this world? Am I actually putting something out in the world that makes a difference? And try as I might, I could not really justify spending my entire life just focusing on gaming news and asking myself, like, what does this mean? Am I making the world a better place? Sure, I might have some effect on gamers and getting better games, but that's not fixing the world. And then I looked at my own country and what my own country is going through, and I kept running up to the same thing. What are you doing? You were given at least a gift of public speaking, of the ability to make sense of things. You should be using this to help fix your world rather than just sort of wallow in it. And so, yeah, I switched, and I'm genuinely blessed every single day. CR, how you doing? Major, how you doing, sir? Dwayne, how you doing? God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Yeah, I get that, right? But I do also have a lot of grace in my heart for people who struggle with this. I have a beloved family member who also struggles with this. So I know for a fact what it is that they go through. And so I always want to have it make sense, right? I don't just want to sort of dive into it and just go, no, this is sin. I want them to understand why it is sin. Because oftentimes what I found in my life, once I understand what sin is and why what I'm doing is sinful, it's much easier to start praying, right? Because now I know what I need to pray for. And one of the prayers that I have very often is, reveal to me the secret sins of my heart. Because we all have them, right? Secret sins that you have this one persistent sin that you for some reason can't get go of. For me, lust is that sin. I just try as I might. It might go a bit well for a couple of days, and then you just fall again. And that sin is being held up by a number of other secret sins, things that you don't know you're struggling with. But once those are revealed, it becomes easier to pray for the one that you do know you have. So in a way, it's a bit of a blessing to know your sins, but also to not know your sins makes it difficult to repent of those that is still sort of bothering you. For you, kind of sad. Our old place is gone now, though. Grofel, I might go back to Twitter, to Twitch at some point. It's just at the moment, the videos that I make, I don't think really fits Twitch, but I might go back at some point. Gert, how you doing, sir? Mustard, how you doing? Jesus paid the ultimate price. If you choose to follow him, you have to die in yourself and overcome sin. Living in sin is not an option. His sacrifice does not cover living in sin. Thanks, Stephen. Gert, absolutely true. Love your content. You are so right about we are born this way. We are all received in sin. However, Father gave us choice. Mustard, yeah, but not just Father gave us choice. Father also gave us grace and mercy. Because remember, without his grace and his mercy, none of us go to heaven. Zero humans will ever be in heaven because of how good they were. Zero. Because we oftentimes, when we think we're good, I had this conversation yesterday with someone in my comment section that said, you don't need to be a Christian to be a good person. And my immediate question was, good according to whom? Or good compared to whom? Because sure, if I compare myself to Jeffrey Epstein, I'm an amazing guy. Like, seriously, ladies, you could not make the wrong decision going for me. Because compared to Jeffrey Epstein, I am a saint. But compared to Jesus, Am I a good person compared to Jesus? If Jesus is the yardstick, and we're told that Jesus is the yardstick, am I a good person then? And the answer is unequivocally no. Ladies, you could not make a worse decision than choosing me if we compare me to Jesus. See, we think in good and bad terms because we always compare ourselves to the worst people we know in terms of how good we are, and to the best people we know in terms of how we're not yet good enough. But understanding that you being a good person, if you want to get to heaven just on how well you're doing with it, you would have to live like Christ lived. If you think you can do that, good luck. Right? Like, seriously, good luck. Because here you have God in the flesh with zero sin ever. He made no mistakes. He never said anything that he doesn't mean. He never acted out of character or in self-righteousness. He never acted out of anger except when it was righteous anger. And even then, he loved his enemies. I'm not that guy. And how do I know I'm not that guy? Whenever I see Julius Malema on my screen, I do not have what I would call self-right or righteous anger. I have some righteous anger, but I also have a lot of self-righteous anger in that moment. And I know what I want, Julius Malema to sort of experience, and that is not love for my enemies. So, in that sense, that I think puts it a little bit more in perspective. Okay, so now that we have successfully discussed this, I think it's time for us to get into the actual topic of the day. And the video, and I will have a Q&A after this where we can sort of talk about it and we can sort of discuss this a little bit more. But I want to focus on there's a thing that is currently happening throughout the country, and you're hearing economists talk about this, you're hearing podcasters talk about this. Everyone is focused on the miracle that is South Africa. And people are focusing on fundamental things, right? The economic growth. The economy, for the first time in a long time, has had 4 consecutive quarters of growth. Never mind the fact that this was 0.9%, 0.8%, 0.5%, and 0.6% growth. Not exactly the best growth that you can imagine, because it sort of averages out to around 0.7% of growth, which is not great. But, it's a nice headline, so let's go with that. People are focused on the Rand doing so much better. And again, there's a lot of reasons why the Rand is doing so much better. And people are saying that the future of our country is looking good. We are on the right track. Finally, South Africa has turned the corner, and from here, the sky is the limit. Now, that's not all economists. There are economists like Dawie Ruot that says, if the government can do X, Y, Z, this economy will be unstoppable. And that's true, right? This government can do about 3 or 4 things, and those 3 or 4 things will absolutely send this economy sky high. One of those things, however, is getting out of the way. Getting out of the way. Well, if you thought that getting out of the way is an option, I have super bad news for all of you. A couple of months ago, the ANC said that they're going to be reviewing Black economic empowerment, and they're going to see to strengthen it and to streamline it so that it will benefit far more people. Turns out not so much. Not too much. BEE is absolutely there to stay. What the ANC is going to do is they are going to review it, and they are going to look at some of the inconsistencies within BEE. But at its core, what you need to understand is that there is an ideology that drives BEE. More importantly, the people within the ANC that is meant to look and review BEE are the very people that are currently benefiting from BEE. Paul Mashatile, for example. Paul Mashatile has become a millionaire as a result of BEE. So BEE isn't going away. President Ramaphosa, in his response to all of the SONA stuff, said as much. They are not removing BEE. In fact, they're looking at expanding BEE. That's the review process. The review process isn't to actually ensure that it helps the vast majority of black people. It's to expand it. Because the idea here is, look, it didn't work as much as we wanted to. And by the way, it's not like it didn't work at all. Take a look at this, for example, from MoneyWeb. Black earners expand. Now, if you actually look at the data here, and this thing can just F right off, right? But if you actually look at the data here, about 41% of white households made more than 75,000 Rand a month in 2024. This is down from 61% in 2012, while the proportion of black households in that bracket climbed from 41% to 41% from 29% over the same period. Now, this is incredibly misleading. It's incredibly misleading because there are, in raw number terms, more white households today that earn over 75,000 Rand a month than what there were in 2012. It went from around 120,000 in 2012 to 2022. This was the last time we actually got these actual numbers, and these were just sort of estimates, but it's around 180,000 at the moment of white households that actually earn over 75,000 Rand a month. For black people, as you can see here, that number has absolutely exploded. In terms of upper class, there are far more black people being entered into the into the upper class than white people, and even much greater than even proportional. Right? It's not even proportional. The point here more, and this is the thing that this article completely ignores, is that when you actually look at the growth for black households versus the growth for white households into the upper middle class, white households have been suppressed. Since Ramaphosa came to power, the suppression has only increased. So we are now adding fewer and fewer prosperous white families to the economy than what we are adding black households to the economy. Why is that a problem? It proves the economic persecution of the white people in South Africa. It proves it. Because if it was absolutely equal, if white people and black people had the same rights and the same freedoms, how do you explain that? How do you explain that white people are growing economically slower than black people? And then you take an actual look at the economy and the rules that base and govern our economy, and you go, oh, well, that makes sense. I'll tell you guys a story. I know a guy. Actually, I'll first start with this story. Standard Bank last year, I believe it was Daily Investor that did an article about Standard Bank, where Standard Bank themselves admitted that their employee base, so the number of people that they actually employ, is 3 times higher than what they need to employ. Why? BEE. It is a reality in this country that the overwhelming majority of black people that matriculate does not deserve to be matriculants. How do we know this? We have a pass rate of 30%. And we have a pass rate of 30% because if the pass rate was any higher, most black children would not graduate. They would not get their matric certificate. And so, what do companies in South Africa do? Well, I need to hire someone to do this job. The only person I have found that can actually do this job is a white guy. But if I'm going to hire this white guy, I also have to hire 4 or 5 black guys to sort of offset. The black guys won't actually do the job, they won't actually do much, but they must be there so that this guy can do his job. This creates all manner of problems. This could be fixed, by the way, just by fixing the education system, because then you would have more than enough black people also graduating at a high enough standard that they could fill those positions and actually be what we would call economically active participants. Right now, this economy, most of this upper class bracket that you see there are filled with people who are economically inactive or economically stale. This means that these individuals being included in the upper class are actually holding the economy back, not boosting the economy. Because you might be arguing to yourself, but wait, Stefan, they're still earning money and they're still spending that money in the economy. So clearly there's still economic growth. Well, no, because if every company in South Africa is forced to hire 3 to 4 times more people than what they need, you suddenly have a problem where most companies that might actually grow to be large enough to actually employ people can't afford to hire more black people just to meet the BEE rules, and therefore they never actually get to grow to that size, and so it is stagnating the economy. You're not actually growing the economy, you're just pushing the economy further down. I'll give you guys another, and this is a personal account. I will not say which company this guy works for, but it is a very large international company that have come up with a new strategy for dealing specifically with South Africa. Now, the strategy is now being employed worldwide because they have found that it actually makes a lot of sense and they're actually making things a little bit easier. Although I don't think it's employed in every single country in the world, but there's a number of third world countries where they're employing the same strategy. The strategy works as follows. You hire a manager that knows what they're doing. The management team then builds a strategic pipeline where the people who work in this pipeline don't have to know what they're doing. They just have to do what they're told. So they don't need to do anything. They just need to do as they're told. In other words, arrive at work and just press this button whenever you see the light go on. It's not quite that simple, but you see the light is green, you press the button. If the light is red, you press the button. As soon as you see a light, just press the button. Because we have built a pipeline that ensures that the work gets done regardless of whether you participate in it or not. And we've made it so simple that you cannot fail. The reason they've done this, they get to still do all of their work and they get to comply with BEE rules. What does this mean? Well, it means that there's now a number of people being employed at this company who have zero skill development. Because what people also don't understand is one of the purposes of having a job is the development of skills. But if I'm working for a company that has dumbed down my job to the point where all I basically have to do is show up, what skills am I actually developing? Will I be able to open my own business with these skills that I'm not developing? The answer is no. And so these people are economically stale. They won't add anything to the economy. They won't take anything away from well, actually, they are taking a lot of things away from the economy, but it's not actively taking it away. It is just it's putting a dampening effect on the economy. This is a personal account that I've been told about that is happening. And I'm told that this isn't just happening with them. It's actually happening with a lot of companies in South Africa that is doing the same thing because they have to comply with BEE. But complying with BEE would mean that they would be incapable of doing their jobs and actually running their companies. And so they have to come up with very, very creative ways of actually making things work. But okay. Cyril Ramaphosa says, no, BEE is still here. I want to play this clip for you guys. I want you to listen to, this is Cyril Ramaphosa speaking on why transformation, and this, by the way, is directly to Corné Mulder. You can hear it in the way he speaks here. He is speaking directly to Corné Mulder here.
It cannot be acceptable to anyone in this house for African people, colored people, and Indian people to be poorer and have fewer opportunities than white people. It cannot be acceptable.
So that's the first lie. You see, the lie that these ANC Marxists consistently tell is that we want to see black people suffer. We want to keep black people down. That's the idea.
And remembering that that was the order of the day in the past. And it can therefore never, 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 never be acceptable that that should continue.
But no one is saying that that should continue, Mr. President. Not a single white person is saying that white people deserve all of the money, black people should just not make any money. What we are asking for is, why do you continuously want to take our stuff and give it to them? Why can't you just grow the economy? Why can't you just create a free market system where black people can participate within the economy on an equal footing with white people, and then everyone can just make money? That's the problem. But notice how the phrasing of this goes. The phrasing that President Cyril Ramaphosa is employing here is one that says that if you are against our transformational redress race laws, you are against black people prospering. Never mind the fact that there is no actual evidence that the majority of black people are prospering. I'll refer to this. Just look at that, guys. Look at the poor. The orange, by the way, is black people. Look at how many black people are in that poor bracket. Look at the working poor, and look at how few people are actually in that bracket. Look at the working class. Look at how few people, actually from all the other races fall into that, and how many black people fall into that. So who are you kidding? Your economic miracle isn't creating a miracle for anyone. It's not really benefiting anyone in this country. The majority is still as poor as it is, and we're saying it's because of you that the majority isn't benefiting from the system. But he's phrasing it very cleverly. If you disagree with us, you don't want black people to prosper. That's the issue.
Because that is what defined our life under apartheid, where it was legislated, where it was practice and protocol, convention and experience that Africans, Indians and coloreds should forever be denied by law to participate in the economy of the country.
But that's also not true. Just quickly want to point out Mr. Ramaphosa's lies. It wasn't that black people weren't allowed to participate in the economy of the country. It was not their country. If you actually understand how apartheid worked, apartheid said, look, here's your Bantustans, your homelands. It's yours. You can do whatever the hell you want here. It is just yours, right? Like, we don't care. Do whatever you want here. And this is ours. And the idea was that we will develop completely separately. So it makes sense that the apartheid government wouldn't allow the black people to participate in their economy. It would be like you saying, I have a right to participate in the German economy. Germany must allow me to get a job there because I have a right to it. Well, no, you don't have a right to it. It's not your country. Now, we can debate whether or not that was right or wrong. We can debate the humanities of it. That's not the point. The point is that under that system, it wasn't that black people were excluded from participating in the economy of their country. It wasn't their country. It was a completely separate country. Their country was the Bantustans to which they belonged. And instead of actually turning those Bantustans into economic miracles, they became communists and just destroyed it. That's actually the truth.
It cannot be acceptable that anyone in this house would want women to earn less than men.
No one said that.
To own less than men. And
I love how communists just make up their own arguments. We want women to earn less than men. We want women to not own as many businesses. Like, who said that?
To run fewer businesses than men. It is something that we simply must never accept. And yet there are people in this house, in this very house, in the debate, who tell us to get rid of the very measures that have been put in place to correct the gross injustice of the past.
Yeah, we're telling you to get rid of it, Mr. Ramaphosa, because you're not helping. Inequality in South Africa has increased since 1994. Increased. Black people on average are poorer today in South Africa than what they were under apartheid. These are results. These are actual statistical realities. Your policies have not, in fact, enriched the majority of black people in this country. it has made them poorer. And that is what we're asking you to remove. We're not asking you to keep black people down and to only promote white people. In fact, we're asking for equal playing field. Let all of us play equally. And you will find all of these racists on X that continuously talk about how, black excellence, how the white people are just crying because they're being outshone by black excellence. And my question has always been the same to these people. If you guys are so excellent, why do you need laws that keep white people from competing with you? Because if I knew that I was faster than you, I would want for us to run a fair and equal race so that I can prove once and for all I am faster than you. But if you win that race because you made me pull 200, kilograms of weight in that race, did you really win? Did you really win, or did I just lose? All we're asking for, Mr. President, is remove the weights. We would also like to participate in this economy equally. And guess what? A rising tide lifts all boats. If you actually allowed it, the economy may actually grow. But of course, that's just not how people think. So he goes on.
It cannot be. We cannot accept that. Now, this issue touches a very raw nerve in me because it is one of the principal issues that we sought to get rid of from this country, the inequality and the exclusion of black people from participating in the economy of the country.
But black people are now free to participate in the economy of the country. White people are the ones being excluded. So you are admitting, in other words, that you fought so that you could exclude white people from the economy, because you're not in fact growing the economy. You're not in fact growing people out of inequality. You're just sort of, shifting money around. Money going from white people to black people, but you're not adding more money to the pie. You're just dividing up the pie. And that's really the basis of communism. Capitalism says, hey, we have a pie. Let's bake more pie so everyone can have pie. Communism says, oh, look, there's a pie. Let's see how much division we can cause here so no one gets pie. And that's literally the ANC in a nutshell. I've been reading through the ANC's National Democratic Revolution documents, and the problem is it's a document that's living, so it always changes, and it's written in such a way that it can always be adapted. And I've been working my way through from the first ever National Democratic Revolution documents all the way up until the most recent ones. And this ideology cannot be defeated. It is insane how powerful this ideology actually has become. I'm busy watching this video. This is all part of the economic, because remember what we're talking about here. I am showing you why South Africa's economy will not grow. And you can take this to the bank, ladies and gentlemen. I am telling you, in 3 years from now, you and I will sit at this very place, God willing, and we will still look at a country that has not grown, at an economy that is not growing, at unemployment that is getting worse year after year, at an economy that is completely on the verge of collapse. We will still look at municipalities that are falling apart. And if you actually go and watch this interview with Sakaliga, Dr. Jonathan Witt explains the ANC's genius plan for the NHI. And you want to know the scariest part of this? They don't have to be successful in the implementation of the NHI. In fact, according to Jonathan Witt, that's not the plan. The ANC knows that they can't actually run the NHI. They understand this. But they only need to complete 1 or 2 phases. Because the first few phases of the NHI is to effectively take every single private medical aid in this country and make them agents of the state. So in other words, these private medical aids will not be allowed to set their own pricing. They will not be allowed to compete. They will have to sort of give feedback and get permission from the government on what they can and cannot do. Their prices will be set at the government level. Once the government has that, they don't need a NHI because they now do control the medical field. There is no more private medical aid. The medical aid is now the government's medical aid. And now what the government can do is they can tell the companies, and listen, this, you're going to love this. They can tell the companies, you have to provide full health care to all of the poor people in the country. Figure it out. What do you think happens next? Because remember, phase 1 and phase 2 gets all of the hospitals to effectively become part of the state. So the state controls all of the hospitals and all of the medical aids. What do you think is the next step? Your private medical aid bill will increase 4, 5, 6, 10-fold. Where maybe now you're paying 4,000 Rand a month for a hospital plan, you will pay 15, 20,000 Rand for that same hospital plan. Where previously you would buy Panado for 50 Rand for 30, you will now pay 500 Rand for 30. Why? Because when you and I go into the pharmacy to buy Panado, we can afford it. But when, Chris from the township walks into the pharmacy, into Clicks, he can't afford to buy Panado, so he needs to get it for free. Which means you and I have to pay for Chris to actually get his painkillers. The government understands that they don't need to control the national health system in order to make those who have pay for those who don't have, without them having to do much. And of course, as you can imagine, this is going to come with a nice bit of a boost for the government, because the government is also going to be involved in this little system where the government is going to get a kickback for all of this new, money that they're putting into the system. So that's ultimately another thing that's sort of staring us in the face. Another reality of this country. So not only are we being bled dry by an ANC that, as you can see here, white people are actively struggling. Guys, I just want to put this into perspective for all of you. Maybe some of you have missed some of my previous videos. Since 1994, the amount of homeless people in South Africa under the white population has more than quadrupled. Some reports show that it may be as high as over 100,000 white people are homeless in today's society. That's that's up from it almost not existing. There were almost zero white homeless people in 1994. Today, that number is astronomically high. Let's look at unemployment, because this we do actually have physical numbers for. Unemployment in 1994 among white people was 4%. Today, just under 8%. That's 100% increase in unemployment. In unemployment for white people. If we look at the median salary and the average salary income for white people, what we're seeing is a diminishing middle class. More and more white people are falling out of the middle class every single year. And the only reason there are still white people in the middle class is because as white people are being forced out of the economy because they can't get jobs, they can't get degrees, they're opening their own businesses. And these businesses are now supplying to them. But here's the truly scary bit, and I'll end this on this, and then we can talk about it. If affirmative action and BEE was the atom and the dynamite, and I'm borrowing a reference here from The Big Short because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. then employment equity is the mad minister sitting with his finger on the big red button. When affirmative action was implemented into South Africa, economists warned that this will slow down economic development, and it did. When BEE was created and implemented, economists warned that it would slow down the economy, and it did. When BEE in 2014 was expanded, they were again warned that this was going to severely harm the economy, and it did. And I can give you the actual physical numbers. Prior to 2007, the economy is growing by roughly 3 to 4% per year. BEE is implemented in 2007. By 2009, the economic growth of South Africa is down to about 1 to 1.9%. This holds until 2016. In 2014, BEE is expanded once again. They're warned this is going to happen. You're going to kill economic growth. From 26 and onwards, economic growth is now down to about 0.9% and sometimes as low as 0.7% of the economy. Every single time one of these programs were implemented, we have the evidence that shows how it has destroyed economic growth. Employment equity is coming for that bracket there. You see the bracket called middle class and upper class? Employment equity is to take those red blocks there and turn them into the red blocks of the poor and the working poor. That's what employment equity will do. Because once employment equity is fully implemented, a minister that has zero business knowledge will be able to tell a company, you have too many white people, you have to fire these white people because your company must now reflect the demographics of the country. Up until now, it's been largely about 50% of your company must be black. It'll now be around 80%. It will eradicate this economy. And what makes it worse, and many people say, oh, but it's only going to be for companies that earn over a certain amount of money every single month. But that's technically not true. It is the companies that earn over, I think right now it's 200,000 random profits every single month, that will be monitored. But once the government monitors a company and decides upon that specific industry, this is what the demographics should look like in the company, it applies to the entire sector, regardless of company size. So yes, the companies being monitored will be the ones that are larger or really small to medium, but it will apply to all of the companies going into that sector. And the minister can decide based on every single sector how many white people and how many black people must be employed in any given sector. Regardless of whether there's enough black people to actually be 80% of the company, doesn't matter. If you want to experience a true economic meltdown, wait until the day that employment equity is actively implemented. It will set this country on fire. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the ultimate reality of it. Okay, so let's go to your discussions. Both my daughters are doctors. Do you think they shall stay in SA if effectively they become government employees and unless than an MP? Graham, no. I know because I have doctors in my family as well. Ferorius, how are you doing, sir? I have doctors in my family as well, and pretty much all of them have said if NHI gets implemented, they'll just leave. Because medical doctors are sought all over the world. Right? So it's not hard for them to get another job. Replaced by a BE custodian after they basically forced me to work a 7-month notice period. Rex, you're not the only person I've ever heard that from. I've heard that from quite a few people. To be honest, what makes people think that Freedom Front will all of a sudden save and take SA forward? Parliament is the problem. Politics is the problem in SA. Pure blood. So here is the... I'm trying to think do I want to make you guys really depressed on a Friday afternoon, or do I want to allow you to have a good weekend? The reason I ask that is I am not convinced with the argument that a different government can fix South Africa. The argument doesn't convince me, and I'll explain it as follows. When we look at this country, we have a tendency to get really angry with the ANC. We ask ourselves, why can't the ANC not keep us safe? Why can the ANC not figure out crime? Why can the ANC not grow the economy? Why is every single government department and government company and government service just so absolutely abysmally poor? What we oftentimes don't focus on is the levels of corruption. And we think about this. Okay, so let's imagine a world in 2029, the Freedom Front wins the election. It is a miracle. We all wake up the next morning and we're like, whoa, the Freedom Front Plus? Really? Dr. Pieter Groenewald is now the president? Holy crap. So now, when Peter says he's going to fix the government, how? The entire government, and I'm not even talking about the people you see working at Home Affairs. I'm talking about the actual bureaucrats that work in government. All of those people in the union buildings, all of those people in parliament, all of those hundreds of thousands of people. There's over 2 million people working for the state. And the vast majority of them are corrupt, or if they're not corrupt, they're inept and unable to do their jobs. So now imagine this. Pieter Groenewald says he's going to fix the economy, and he's going to start by figuring out the departments and fixing the departments of this country. Immediately you have a government shutdown because these guys will not be fired and they will not be dictated to by a white man what they can and cannot do. So now you have a government shutdown. Pieter Groenewald can't do anything. So Pieter Groenewald phones the police, who is just as corrupt. Come sort out these people, striking and burning down buildings. No. Because we will not serve a white man. And now you have a big problem. You don't have the police because they are incredibly corrupt and they do not want someone that will follow the law. And you don't have the government. They're on strike. They're burning the buildings down. So you turn to the military and you say, hey, can you guys help? But the military is just as corrupt and inept. So they're not helping you either. My question is, how do you fix the country? What do you actually do to fix this country? It's a question that I'm struggling with consistently. And my main thing that I always run back to is I don't see how you fix this country without war. I don't. And I'm not advocating for civil war or for war. We must never be the ones to start such a thing. I'm just talking in the abstract, in the theoretical. I don't see how you fix it. And by the way, I will extend this to countries around the world. One of the things that allows for people to find peaceful resolutions to disagreements is the ability to compromise, the ability to find a sort of golden midway. We'll take this road. We won't both be happy, but we won't both be, super unhappy either. In order to find a compromise that works, There needs to be a common set of values that we agree on. Now, take someone that is on the left and someone that is on the right of the political spectrum. And this isn't super helpful. Left and right thinking isn't super helpful because, well, there's a ton of problems that is created within it. But let's just say you have someone that's on the far left and someone on the right, right? Or not even far left, because the left these days is pretty much just far left. But you're someone on the left, someone on the right. Okay, so let's look at the issues where we can find common cause. The left wants to take the wealth from the rich and give it to the poor. No, because we know this doesn't work. What's the compromise? Well, the left wants to take the money from the rich and give it to the poor. They also want to socialize all of the means of production in order to free the country from the capitalistic pigs, as they call it. What's the compromise? How do I, as a free market conservative capitalist, compromise with that? What possible road of compromisation do we find here? Because I don't want to tax the rich, not even a little, because I understand that taxing the rich never actually leads to prosperity. It just leads to suffering. No country has ever taxed itself into success. Every country that has tried to tax itself into prosperity just ends up creating a lot of poverty. Okay, so we can't really compromise there because the left wants that, and I don't want that. And now we can say, well, okay, instead of taxing them 70%, let's just tax them 35%. Yeah, but I don't want to tax them at all. Because I understand that even a 35% extra tax on the wealthy will create more poverty. Because the one thing that leftists do not understand is that there is no such thing as a tax on the rich. It doesn't exist. All taxes, everywhere, is a tax on the poor. If you increase the taxes on the rich, what do? They increase their prices on the goods that the poor have to buy. That's 100% how it works. If you increase the taxes on the rich, they're not stupid. They want to have money. And so if you tax them 50%, they're going to raise their prices in order to make back the money that you just took from them. Right? So all taxes filter down and run back to the same stream. The poor pay for it. So I don't want to do that. We can't compromise on that. Let's take something simpler. Let's take something simple and easy. The left wants to kill babies. And they believe that it is a woman's right to kill babies, provided that that baby has not been born yet. I do not want women to have the right to kill babies. If you want to exercise your right to free choice, don't have sex before marriage. That's your choice. No one forced you to have sex before marriage. You made that choice. No one said don't use a condom. You made that choice. You had plenty of choices leading up to the event of life being created. Once that life is created, however, we say, you can't kill that. That's a human being now. You should have exercised your right to free choice long before we got to this point. But the left says, no, but we do want to kill our babies. So what do we compromise on? What exactly is the compromisation here? Where do we compromise? Because the left will say, okay, fine. We won't kill them right up until the moment before birth. Let's just kill them, before 20 weeks. And I go, no. Let's kill them never. And the left goes, no, that's unfair. I'm like, no, like seriously, let's kill them never. Murder is never okay. Okay, so we can't compromise on that. What else? The left says that a man can become a woman and a woman can become a man. And there is no such thing as a man or a woman because they're just social constructs. But also a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. And you have to respect that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man, even though a man and a woman doesn't actually exist. They're just social constructs. It's very confusing, but the left says that that is actually true. I say that if you have a penis, you're a dude. And I also have another radical opinion. This might upset a lot of you, and I apologize ahead of time. I happen to think that men can't get pregnant. And I know, right? That is insane. But it's just one of those feelings that I have deep inside of me that a man cannot get pregnant. And I have that feeling for a couple of reasons. One is because I know a little bit about biology. Not much, but I do know a little bit. But then, perhaps more importantly than that, it's actually one of the few things that I'm incredibly grateful for. If I were to pray about petty things, I would pray every single night and say, thank you. Thank you that I do not need to go through that. Because, boy, are women powerful for the ability to actually go through that, because I would not. If it was up to men to get pregnant, the human race would be extinct. I would just absolutely refuse to put my body through that. So I know that men cannot get pregnant, but the left refuses to listen to that. So what do we compromise on? Where is the compromisations that we can actually agree? Okay, we can get. So now my question becomes, how do we resolve our differences peacefully? How do we find a peaceful resolution with these people? And I will give you the answer. You can't. There is no peaceful resolution. I do not believe that there is any ability to reason with a communist. Their ideology is a religion. And the religion is built in such a way that there is no way to reason them out of their positions. It cannot be done. And so if any country wants to free itself from the blight of communism, I think there's only one solution. You have to eradicate it. It has to be oppressed. In the surest and most absolute terms, it needs to be squashed. And you cannot allow that ideology to exist in your midst. You cannot. It is not an ideology that is conducive to normal, ordinary, freedom-loving, decent societies. It doesn't lead to decency. It is a corrupting ideology that turns parents against their kids and kids against their parents, families against one another, and turns countries upside down. Every single communist country became communist through an insane amount of bloodshed. Because communism knows only one way, and that is to kill until the revolution is complete. And why are they allowed to do this? Because that which advances the revolution is ethical. If we have to kill 500,000 capitalists in order to bring about the communist revolution, well, that's just the price of doing business. They were evil capitalists anyways. I don't think that you can debate and reason and compromise with an incredibly evil and selfish ideology. Because I guarantee you, the people who follow this ideology, people like Kim Heller, people like Karl Nehaus, people like Cyril Ramaphosa, they don't actually care. I promise you guys, I will go to the bank with this. Cyril Ramaphosa has never lost a minute of sleep over the poor in this country. Ever. Cyril Ramaphosa, Kim Heller, Karl Nehaus would gladly watch 1 million black people suffer if it meant that 2 million white people suffered as well. Because the ideology isn't based on actual care and love for the poor. The ideology is based on hatred of the other. It used to be with Karl Marx, the hatred of capitalists. In today's world, communism has gone through a number of iterations thanks to postmodernism being introduced and intersectionality and all the rest of it. Today, that enemy is white people. And it is about the suffering and the struggle of white people. They could not care less about the poor. They could not care less about the oppressed. The oppressed and the poor is a tool. It's a tool that they can use to beat the white people with and watch the white people suffer. How do you compromise and build a nation with that? I don't know if it's possible. What do you guys think? 100%. The left serves Satan and will reap what they vote for. I want to know. I never tried. The abortion and trans issues are big issues I have with the DA and some other parties. Cycling journeys, you're not alone. You're not alone. The DA is just as far left, I would argue, as the ANC is. They're just more competent. So I don't view the DA as in any way, shape, or form less far left than the ANC. They're just as far left. The difference, really, the main difference is that the DA is more competent, and the DA's socialist tendency is maybe even in their own minds. Maybe they don't even view themselves as actual communists, because I think they do actually view themselves as mixed economists. They believe in a mixed economy. So they're democratic socialists. Insofar as they think the ANC is too socialist, they would like something a bit different. But fundamentally, they are like the ANC in almost every regard. They need to be the savior to maintain control of the masses, and to do that, they need to perpetuate the idea of victimhood. Debbie, absolutely true. You can't stop it, Stephen. Francia, you're probably not wrong. Parliament is owned by the World Economic Forum. True. DA is WF buddies. DA is evil. I don't know if I would say they're evil. Well, I think it depends. If we're talking in absolute terms, yes, they're evil. But if we're talking in human terms, I have this sort of philosophy from a human perspective that evil... No, it's going to be too difficult to explain. I don't think the DA... I think the ANC is evil because I think the ANC desperately wants to see white people suffer. For them, it is about vengeance. I think from the DA's perspective, they genuinely believe that their worldview will make the world a better place. They genuinely believe that. Soft in the middle? Yeah, I feel sorry for Nigel Farage because I think Nigel Farage, he fell into the exact same trap that every single right-wing government falls into. The exact same trap. The right-wing governments, Atomic, how you doing, sir? CCS, how you doing? Chart, how you doing? The Determining, how you doing? Atlantis, how you doing? The trap that they fall into is once they get popular, they start to think to themselves, if I just moderate my views slightly, so instead of being absolutely against immigration, if I'm just tough on immigration, right, but not absolutely against it, maybe the left will vote for me. And once the left votes for me, I'll win the election. Right? I think, Michelle, thank you so much for the 70 Rand donation. I truly appreciate you. Thank you. You're far too kind, Michelle. How are you? And that I think is where they fell into. I think Nigel Farage fell into this idea that if he just regulates his language a little bit, he might actually get the left to vote for him. And of course, the left will never vote for him because the left wants full-blown communism. The left doesn't want to hear anything about borders or anything about immigration or anything about anything. They want you to full-blown follow it. And that's the end of the discussion, right? It's Friday. My mindset is all right. Michelle, I'm very happy to hear that. I'm very happy to hear that. He wants the popular vote, of course. Yeah, but that's going to cost him the election. Because now that Lowe is in the running, I think a lot of the people who supported reform is going to walk over to Rupert. I don't think Farage is ever going to be the Prime Minister of Britain. Being political now, finally gave up on WoW. Azrael, how you doing, bro? Yeah, I've given up on WoW a long time ago, right? Like I haven't covered World of Warcraft in more than a year, if not longer, actually. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what Rupert Lowe can do. I think Rupert Lowe is gonna win the election. Not necessarily immediately. In fact, I could actually see a coalition government between Reform and Restore if Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage can figure out their stuff. Because it's not, I don't think, enough time yet. Politics requires time. You need time to convince voters that aren't as plugged in. You know, look at South Africa, for example. I would consider a lot of people in my family to be politically active enough. They're not super active. Like, my family isn't super active political people, but they're active enough. And the amount of times where I'll get a family member that phones me and they'll be like, do you know anything about this? And I'll be like, yeah, but this happened like 3 months ago. But they only just found out about it. Right? So for a lot of people, politics sort of has this lagging effect. They don't know about it immediately. They sort of, you know, they'll find out about it when the WhatsApp group starts sending the messages around. Because I see it with my family groups, because I have a bunch of family WhatsApp groups with different people from my family in different groups, and I'll see messages sort of start to play around. You know, just these messages that say been forwarded many times, and it's like old news, but they're all acting as if this has just happened, because most people have a lot of stuff that they care about, right? They're occupied with work, and they're occupied with, you know, investments and all the rest of it. They don't have time. Like, I have time. This is my job, right? So I can sit here the entire day and just read the news. And there are some people that are plugged in, like you guys, right? You're plugged into this. You show up to the live streams, you watch the videos, you read the news, you want to be informed. But a lot of people don't. They sort of get depressed with politics, and so after a while, they're just like, I need a break from this. So it is what it is, you know? People generally will only start to take interest when it gets too hot in the kitchen. Yeah, when people start to feel it in their pockets, that's when they'll start to go, whoa, something's very wrong here. Has anyone ever played Scum or Rust? Atom1 Creed, how you doing, sir? I played Rust years ago, probably like 3 years ago. I played Scum when it first came out. I'm not a huge fan of survival games. Right now, the game that I'm playing most is Slay the Spire. I've fallen in love with that. Menace is a game that I've been playing a bit, and Mana Lords, building a medieval town. I'm addicted to Mana Lords. And then I tried to play Subnautica because I love the premise of Subnautica, but it's too scary for me. I hate scary games. Like, I despise scary games. And so yeah, especially in water. I have a thing about, you know, things chasing me in the water, so I can't play Subnautica all that much. What news sources do you suggest? Oh, name. There is no one news source, because not even the conservative news sources give you the actual story. One thing you have to remember is there's no such thing as people giving you unbiased news. That doesn't exist. Everyone has a bias. I myself have a bias. And so what you need to keep in mind is that bias. And so what I do with the news is I'll read every single article I can find on it. Right? So I'll try and read from the left, I'll try and read from the right, and then just think about it. think about the story logically, think about it rationally, sort of compare the two stories with each other, and then I'll come to a conclusion on what I think happened here. And it's usually where those stories overlap is usually the best place to start, on the information that is the same, and then you focus on the information that isn't the same and look, why isn't the information the same? So information that you can almost immediately disregard is information that just plays against the worldview of whichever news source you're reading. So, for example, there was a shooter. Say, I'm just using this as an example, but imagine we just found out that there was a bomb in Manchester. If you read the left-wing news sources, they'll tell you, a British man blew himself up. You read the right-wing guys and they'll tell you a Muslim man blew himself up. But if I'm only reading the left-wing news source, I will immediately know why they say a British man blew himself up, because it is against their worldview to say a Muslim man blew himself up. Even though all of us know, right? If you read, and I guarantee you this, if you read a story right now about a man anywhere in the world blowing himself up, it would be the safe bet that it's some kind of Muslim. That's the safe bet. Because there's only one religion that happens to really like going boom. Most of the other religions, all religions have their fanatics, but just this one seems to really have a thing for going boom. But the left, of course, can't admit that. That would be just absolutely sacrosanct to their ideology. My favorite news source, Gert, thank you so much for that. I truly appreciate that. Very kind of you to say. SA is definitely a survival game. Also true. I mean, I was almost shot yesterday. Like, that was insane. I made a video about it this morning just to sort of hopefully warn people about what's happening on the N2 and what to be careful about, because, oh man, I forgot that feeling. I forgot that feeling of realizing this might be the end. Just waiting for that bang to go off, and you're like, oh crap. This is gonna suck. Blowing yourself up. I think you read the wrong Kama Sutra. I really hope it doesn't come to that. Michelle, doesn't come to what? If Iran has a regime change, how do you think it will affect the SA government? Okay, so Azriel, if Iran has a regime change, and if it is a regime change for the better, I think South Africa itself isn't in too much trouble because we have very little trade with Iran. But the ANC, I think, is in serious trouble. I think the ANC is in genuine serious trouble. So we don't have absolute evidence of this, but we do have sort of suspicions. Let's just say there's a lot of suspicion about the funding mechanisms of the ANC. And if you study the events of sort of big things that's happened throughout the world and how the ANC has reacted to those big things and how suddenly the ANC goes from completely bankrupt to flush with cash, it stands to reason that the ANC is being funded by the Iranians. If that funding disappears, I think the ANC is done. I don't think the ANC has an answer beyond that point. So yeah, I think the ANC is done. I don't necessarily think South Africa will be that affected. We don't do that much business with Iran. The Muslim booms? Michelle, I genuinely wish I could give you better news, but I don't. I think it's going to get worse. I think there are incredibly violent elements within Islam. And the sad part is that the way these violent elements within Islam operate, it does not allow peaceful coexistence. It's not a religion that can peacefully coexist or wants to. I've heard of rumors and ties between the ANC and Iran. I don't doubt it. Nuclear things and all that. The determining, I genuinely think that there is more to that story. The problem is we don't have a media that will ask that question or seriously investigate it. It's one of the main reasons why I really want to grow this channel, because one of my first hires will be an investigative journalist. And hopefully I have the money to send that guy or girl out and say, look, here's what I want you to investigate. Take 9 months, take a year. Find the evidence. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what it costs. Find the evidence so that we can do a story on what is actually happening here. That's just one of the stories that I would absolutely love to cover. Because I think in many ways, YouTube is the answer to the death of investigative journalism. See, most of the mainstream media killed investigative journalism because it costs too much and it doesn't pay enough. You have this journalist that's out there investigating a story, sometimes for years. You have to pay for the hotel, you have to pay for the contacts, you have to pay for everything, the salary, the works. Then that guy comes back, he writes his expose. The expose is, 10,000 words. And if you're lucky, 10,000 people read it, right? So the advertisers aren't paying you that much. You're not making that much money on the story. The story's too long. It just doesn't have to draw. Whereas a quick and easy story, oh, Trump said something, that's easy, right? So most journalists make far more money just looking on Twitter, whatever Trump said next, and just writing an article about that than actually paying for months and months of investigations. Whereas I think YouTube can serve that purpose. Because guess what is one of the number one pieces of content that people consume on YouTube? YouTube documentaries. People love YouTube documentaries. One of my favorite things is podcasts, right? I love watching a podcast. Like a good podcast, can't go wrong with that. My second favorite thing is YouTube documentaries. I'll just find a video about, sometimes it's not even about stuff that I care about. The other day, I watched an entire documentary on, pay attention to this, the fall of some K-pop band. I don't listen to K-pop. I couldn't even name a K-pop band if you paid me. But this thing was about this K-pop band and how it all unraveled, and then there was fighting between the members. And I just sort of had it on in the background while I'm playing games and just listening to the drama of K-pop, whatever, right? Because it's fun. So you can have investigative journalists put together a massive case, and you can present that as a huge documentary, and you'll make your money back. You'll make a lot of money. So that's something that I really want to work towards. Oh, Saints, is it that hot at the moment? Where are you? I spend more time on long form YouTube content than TV series. They are all crap now anyway. Thanks, Wokies. So I just discovered a TV series that I never watched before, but for some reason I'm actually sad that I have never watched it. Sons of Anarchy. How many of you have watched Sons of Anarchy? Whatever happens, South Africans will survive. We already have the high walls, barbed wire. True, Debbie. So I was looking for a show, and I tend to be a huge fan of supernatural stuff and sort of, stories of vampires and stuff. And so I originally downloaded True Blood, right? Well, I didn't download it, but I watched True Blood. First 5 minutes of True Blood, I realized I can't watch this. If you're a Christian, you cannot watch True Blood. Like the pretty much 5 minutes in, there's a scene that I just realized, no, this will not work. So I switched that off. Now I'm sitting there going, man, I was really hoping to sink my teeth into another series. What am I watching? And so I was just sort of endlessly scrolling, and here, Sons of Anarchy. I'm like, oh, I've never watched it, but fine, I'll give it a go. I think I'm on season 2 or maybe up almost at season 3. What a show. Like, seriously cool show. So if you haven't watched Sons of Anarchy yet, you should absolutely do that. If you want a really cool show as well, the Pendragon Cycle, The Rise of Merlin, is a really cool show. It's from the Daily Wire. I think you need Daily Wire Plus in order to watch it, but it's also a very, very good show. Fringe is also super good. I watched Fringe when it came out. Really, really good. I can't say I have. I know it's pretty old. A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a pretty decent, at least. My brother, who was in the Netherlands just now, he actually told me about Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. And when he got back, boy, did he have a lot of things to say about the Netherlands. He came back here, and his first words to me was, Europe's gone. And he makes mention of something very interesting. He says the welfare state in that country has effectively made people completely unaware. Like, the vast majority of people in the Netherlands just they don't know what suffering is. They don't know what hardship is. If you don't work in the Netherlands, you get €2,000 a month from the government. Just yours. You can do with it what you want. School free, hospital is very, very cheap. Everything's just sort of given to you on a silver platter. And so those people just sort of mindlessly go through life. They don't think about making their lives better. They don't care about starting businesses. No one. Like, he spoke to so many people in the Netherlands. Here in South Africa, pretty much every single person I've ever spoken to has some aspiration to open their own business, even if they might never open their own business. They have an aspiration to it, right? You want to start your own thing. You don't want to work for the man your entire life. You want to eventually have financial independence. He says it's the complete opposite in the Netherlands. Every single person he speaks to has zero interest in starting their own business. Why? I'm earning a salary. I'm taken care of. The government makes sure that, I get holiday when I need it. And it's a lot of holiday. It's like 35 days a year that you have to take holiday. Still a better love story than Twilight. Peterson, why you gotta say that? I'm an enigma. I like Twilight. Is Twilight the greatest love story I've ever watched in my life? Hell no. But it's fine. It's not bad. I've seen worse. It's a good time killer. So yeah, I'm fine with Twilight. I mean, if I'm gonna go for like a good love story, I'd say definitely Maybe is a must watch. The Proposal is another great love story if you want to get proper love story. Notebook is way too dramatic for me. Wedding Crashers even is a great love story. But Twilight was good. It wasn't a bad show. I liked it. Weet negere gebouw. Hulle sê dit was ook wat mense soos ons. Ek het geen idee nie. Ek het nie 'n idee wie dit gebou het nie. And here we want to work, but can't. So self-business is a thing for us. Michelle, yeah, but that's the thing. Remember, necessity is the mother of all invention. Oh yeah, I forgot, Ferorius. I forgot you're actually in here. Ferorius is actually from the Netherlands. Yeah, my brother was just there for about 30-something days. He was in the Netherlands, and he's like, from his perspective, it's just fallen apart. Like he doesn't want to go back because he says no one seems to care. Just no one seems to care. One of the Twilight movies was really violent. Second or third one, I think it's the third one. Gamers Republic. It's the one with the war. To my shame. Are you really ashamed that you watched Twilight? A True Blood fan. Twilight is meh, but Bram Stoker is still number one. Michelle, yeah, for me, it's just, if you're a Christian man, you cannot watch True Blood. There's no shot. The amount of sex and sexualization in that show, it will drive me up the wall. I will just struggle with that. Last year and before. Just saw your attempted hijack video. Glad you're okay. Also got it at the same spot last year and before. Wow, Darius, I'm so sorry to hear that. So this is actually a constant thing. Thank you. I truly appreciate that. I just remember it happening in the moment, and dude, you guys know when, so the exact feeling that I had, when someone is about to hit you on the back, dudes will know what I'm talking about. You know that the slap is coming, but you're sort of bracing yourself for it. Like, it's coming, but you're just sort of waiting. That's the feeling times 5, right? It's like this, just, you're about to hear the pop, and then you're probably going to, feel the pain or whatever. And you're just waiting for it, just knowing, yeah, here it goes. Don't. So I work at the airport. This is a frequent thing on that road. Damn. The police officers, just listen to this. So I walk into the police office there at the airport, and I say to the police, look, I've just, there's an attempted hijacking. I was just, the guy had a gun on me. And I give them, I tell them it's from the N2 on the off ramp, the turnpike to Airport Access Road. And the police goes, why didn't you kill him? I'm like, what? He said, you should have just run him over. And I'm like, okay. I mean, sure. She's like, no, you run him over, we come, we collect him, and you go home. I'm just like, wow, not really my job, I'm not really in the crime fighting business. But it's just, yeah, this is South Africa. Welcome to South Africa. Just run over the guy and, we'll pick up his body later. It's like, okay, well, thanks for that. Obviously, that's not what would happen. That's what they say, but that's not what would happen. It's actually one of the reasons my brother didn't run the guy over, why he swerved out and sort of went past, because, it's going to lead to investigations, court cases where you're going to have to prove that, you weren't aiming for the guy, because otherwise they're going to try and get you on manslaughter. Because in this country, if you're a criminal, you have far more rights than free people. And everyone knows it, but no one can do anything about it. But ken ons van die Epstein files. Franco, I've been watching a lot of podcasts and videos and people who have teams that are sort of laying out the Epstein files. The one thing I know about the Epstein files is the exact reason why I said releasing the Epstein files will probably not mean much. Not much will happen. Because while, yes, the public has the right to know, there's also now multiple reports of innocent people whose names happen to be in emails who are now dragged into it, right? In the court of public opinion, they're now somehow part of this whole deal. You have allegations in the Epstein files, and people are treating those allegations as if they're true, even though they're just allegations. It's not even a thing that's actually happened. Besides, I think the really important Epstein files are those 3 odd million files that has not been released yet. Those are the files that I think the Justice Department won't release because those are the cases they're building. Those are like the actual guilty people. The one thing that it has proven is that there seems to be very shadowy forces in this world working together. And they have quite a few plans for the world that I think most of us would not agree with and most of us would not be happy with. So yeah, I don't know. I genuinely don't have the time to go through the Epstein files with everything else that I'm doing. I've been trying, but you'd actually have to spend days reading through the emails, building the sort of ideas and the cases around it. And I don't have that time. So I've been looking into stuff that I cared about. So, for example, I've been looking into President Trump because I wanted to know. Even though I knew they wouldn't have anything in there if he was implicated, I was happy to find out that not only is President Trump not in the Epstein files as one of the bad guys, but more importantly, he was actually the informant of the FBI. I think that was a really bad day for the Democrats, and a bad day for the Democrats is a good day for Stefan. When it turns out that he was the guy that told the FBI, look into Maxwell as well. She's just as dirty and guilty. What's funny is that the people of South Africa, the leftists in South Africa, still believe that Donald Trump is a PDF file. They still believe it. Even though the emails in no way, shape, or form show that. Even though the emails show that he was the guy that warned the FBI about Jeffrey Epstein, they still believe that he is a PDF file. So yeah, it just shows you, once that ideology takes you, there is no way to move people off of it. So Zuma is also in the files. I think there's a lot of things. There's a lot of stuff about South Africa in those files. I just think none of it is surprising. None of it is really things that we didn't know, or at least didn't suspect to some extent, right? They have to be like that to justify their hate toward him. Yeah, it's just, I get hating someone, but surely you want to hate someone for a good reason, no? Like, the last thing you want is to hate someone that doesn't deserve it. At least that would be my thinking. Good thing a lot of other people are being exposed because of Trump syndrome. Dude, I actually, so I'm going to end this stream on this because I have to go buy flour. And it's quite a bit away from where I live. I don't know if you guys know, but I don't eat normal bread. I bake my own bread using freshly mulled flour. So I'm just going to a place where I buy the mulled flour and then they mill it for you as well. And, so I'm going there now. But before I do, I wanna say this. The ANC is currently hopeful, very hopeful, because they believe that Donald Trump is going to lose. Well, not just Donald Trump, but pretty much all of the MAGA is going to lose the next election. They also believe that the Republicans are going to lose the local or the midterm elections. I have a feeling that not only is President Trump not going to lose the midterm elections, I believe that the Republicans are probably going to hold the House and the Senate. Even if they don't hold the House and the Senate, I don't think life's going to get better for the ANC. But after Marco Rubio's speech at the Munich Defense Council, at the Defense Forum, a ticket of JD Vance and Marco Rubio will be unstoppable. JD Vance and Marco Rubio will be unstoppable. I don't see a single person that can stand against them. And yes, that speech was probably the best speech I've ever heard in my life, because that's exactly what it should be. We should not be ashamed of who we are, of who we were, of what we've given to this world. We should not be ashamed. And that doesn't mean that we repeat the mistakes of the past. It doesn't mean that we repeat apartheid or repeat slavery, even though we didn't invent slavery. What it means is that we have given this world a lot of good stuff. In fact, I would go so far as to say that pretty much everything that is good came from us Europeans. We built it, we made it, we invented it, we sent it out into the rest of the world. And fundamentally, we should be proud of that. And we should try and replicate it, because we learn from the past. If this country would just wake the hell up and actually embrace freedom, embrace capitalism with the incredible people that we have, can you imagine how rich South Africa would be? We are a country blessed beyond blessings. You guys do realize that the overwhelming majority of gold in the world come from us. That's how much gold we have. Silver, copper, rare earth minerals, uranium. You name the mineral and we have it, too much of it. We may even have oil. We know we have gas. If you can get the green idiots out of the way, we could have gas coming out the wazoo. We could probably have oil if we could just bloody drill for it without the greenies crying the whole time. South Africa would be an unstoppable juggernaut if we could just embrace the capitalist freedoms of Europe without repeating the mistakes of the past. But sadly, the left seems incapable of separating the past from the future. For them, if you remember the victories of Europe, that's just because you want slavery back. To them, it is impossible to imagine that you want the prosperity and the empire of Europe to now include everyone. They can't make that connection. Tank in a battle, you need someone who can operate it. You're right, but laziness and hatred are the bane of innovation. I'm not even sure that, I wouldn't even say that South Africans are lazy. I think South Africans are most definitely they're held back by their hatred. But I wouldn't say they're lazy. I think there's a lot of people in South Africa that are willing to work very hard. But hatred is the big problem. Most or a lot of black people in South Africa and white leftists live in this constant, as I said earlier. It's not about helping black people prosper. It's about punishing white people. The focus is on punishing the white people. And as long as that's your focus, you're always going to fail. But okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to love you and leave you. I hope that you guys are going to have a wonderful weekend. I'll probably have some videos tomorrow morning, dependent on the news cycles and stuff. I really appreciate, Michelle, the 70 Rand donation that you've given me. I very much appreciate the donation that I got before the stream started. Thank you so much for that. You're very kind. You asked to remain anonymous, and so I will respect that, but I truly appreciate the donation. Again, I am happy to converse and discuss and talk to people. So if you want to talk, even if you just want to say hello, you're welcome to DM me either on X or send an email if you want to be very formal about it, or a DM on Discord, and I'd be happy to chat to you. There's been a few people who's DM'd me about playing games together. I if I have the time, sure. I haven't played games for longer than 20 minutes at a time in months. I tend to take like 20 minutes and then I just quickly go, oh, I'll just quickly do this. And then I go on and I start working again. So I don't really sit down and play games anymore. Michelle, thank you so much for the 35 Rand donation. I truly appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Name, I do have a Discord server, but I don't use it. It was for gaming, but now that I no longer do the gaming stuff, there's no point in me really. I still have my Discord name, right? And I have the profile because I still have friends there that DM me and we talk and stuff like that. But yeah, for the most part, like the server itself is still just a bunch of gamers hanging out, and there's some political conversations that happen over there. But I'm not actively involved in that because yeah, I figured out long ago that I struggle to keep up with all of the social stuff, and so I had to prioritize what social stuff I'm gonna be, keeping up with and what I'm just gonna be sort of passing over. But I really appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful weekend, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope it was informative. I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.